Our second scripture comes from the book of Romans. We're continuing in Paul's ethical dimensions of the gospel here. Chapter 13, verses 8 to 14. Owe no one anything except to love one another. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. The commandments: you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. Besides this, you know what time it is, how it is now the moment for you to wake from sleep. For salvation is nearer to us now than when we became believers. The night is far gone, the day is near. Let us then lay aside the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us live honorably as in the day, not in reveling and drunkenness, not in debauchery and licentiousness, not in quarreling and jealousy. Instead, put on the Lord Jesus Christ. Make no provision for the flesh to gratify its desires. Do we have any Shakespeare buffs here? Anybody? Me either. But it's enough a part of our culture that we all know bits and pieces, right? And I'm going to give a quote from Hamlet, and I'll bet everybody here knows it. It's from Polonius, who evidently had lots of wonderful quotable material in Hamlet. Polonius said, "Neither a borrower nor a lender be." And if we read the rest of the thing, it makes some sense, because he goes on to say that the reason you don't want to lend to a friend is because when you do that, you end up losing both the friend and the money. And we understand that. But beyond that, that statement is so incredibly foreign to us that it might as well come from another planet. Debt is central to our culture. And if you've noticed, I changed my title from the one that's out there on the board, awake from your sleep, and the one that's on your bulletin and up on the screen is living in debt. We know about living in debt in our culture. And indeed, if you have never had any debt in our culture, you're in a world of trouble. Because without having debt, you have no credit rating. Without having credit rating, people don't know what to do with you. And when you try to buy something, you always end up paying more for it. Virtually in our culture, everyone who owns a home has a mortgage. Big debt. It's so universal for us that when you ask people about their debt, if they're homeowners, as often as not, they're likely not to include that in what their debt is. It's so important that it gets special treatment in the tax code. Everybody has a mortgage. Not really, but there at least is that sense that that's how good Americans are supposed to go. You're supposed to, when you grow up, you're supposed to buy a house and have a mortgage and big debt. And you get a tax credit for it. You can deduct your interest. And it's so built into our society that it works in a positive way for you. We have a close friend who retired 2 years ago, Larry. About 2 years ago, and he sold his house in Schenectady, New York. Now this is the crazy thing. And he moved to someplace even cheaper than that. So he had enough money in his pocket that he could go and pay cash for his house in Dayton, Ohio. And as he was talking with his financial advisor about that, the financial advisor said, "Oh, no. Don't do that. Don't pay cash for your house. Take that money and invest it and take a mortgage out. Because you'll make more than you will pay in interest, plus you get to deduct the interest, so your bottom line will be much better off if you have a mortgage than if you don't." So put the money in the bank and get a mortgage. Most of us sitting here are old enough that when we graduated from college, we were ready to go. That's not the case anymore. If we look at current students or recent grads, it's virtually impossible now for someone to get through 4 years of college or through trade school, or worse yet, college plus grad school without significant educational debt. Part of the problem that medical costs are as high as they are is because you can't get through college and med school without having 6 figures plus of debt when you graduate. And so if you don't charge what you charge, you can't pay off your school. If we look at any group of millennials, we are also looking at a group of people who are likely burdened with astounding debt. And all of that is before we start adding on credit cards, payday loans, cars. I remember when if you took a three-year loan on a car, that was incredible. Why would you pay for a car for 3 years? Now when you go, they are looking at, oh, well, we've got a 6-year loan you can get on this car, or more than that. And then you go to the physician or the optometrist or the dentist, and you see the copay for whatever it is that you're having done, and they come and say, well, you can do this on credit. You can even get your kidney out on credit. And when you go to the store, everything you buy, the person at the cash register punctuates the interaction with, are you going to pay for this with your Macy's, Best Buy, whatever other store credit card? And if you say no, they say, you can get one today, and you will save whatever amount on your purchase. And so checking out with everything from a pair of pants to a refrigerator, we're offered that wonderful opportunity to be more in debt. It's part of our culture. The lender part is less obvious perhaps, but just as ubiquitous. If you have a 401k or a 403b retirement account, you are a lender. If you have an interest-bearing checking account or savings account at the local bank, you are a lender. When I was a kid in school, one of the things that we did through our schools, I don't know if they still do this, but every Friday we would get the opportunity to buy little stamps that we would put on a little thing, and we would get interest on that as we got older and held it for a length of time. We were taught in grade school to be lenders. Debt, which obviously if we're lending, someone else is in debt. Debt is foundational to our economy. Now, there's a law in the Old Testament that always makes me smile, and that's the year of Jubilee. From what anyone can tell, it never happened. And you can guess why. Because one of the core pieces of it was that every 50 years, all debts would be canceled. And if you had purchased property from someone and paid it off, didn't matter, at 50 years that property went back to the original family of ownership. And everything got leveled out again, every 50 years. Can you imagine what would happen in our culture if someone said, hey, let's do the year of Jubilee again? Everything would grind to a halt. Can't buy a house, because you don't get to keep it. And worse than that, the Chumash would really make out like bandits. And of course, then they would have to struggle with who was here before the Chumash. So who doesn't get this land? And every debt that there is would get to be a problem. Well, A few years ago, I was the president of the Interfaith Initiative, and we ran into a brick wall of a problem. Somebody gave a chunk of money to the IFI to be used for an endowment to help keep that organization working for years to come. And so the board sat down and we started to say, wow, look at this. We've got this big chunk of money. We can invest it and we can make money and it's going to help. And the Muslim on the board raised her hand and she said, wait, we're Muslims. We can't receive interest. And the rest of us looked at her and said, what? How can you live in America and not be part of the debt and lending system? She said, well, we don't do that. Well, how do you buy a house if you can't have a mortgage loan? Well, we have Muslim companies, and when you want to buy a house, they go and buy the house, and then they resell it to you at a profit. And you pay them back monthly payments on that increased price for a length of time with no interest. But then you don't get an interest deduction on your taxes. Well, yeah, that's right, because we're not paying any interest. But that's how they do it. And so we learned that there are Muslim companies that do investments, but they don't pay interest. They do things like that. They buy a house and they resell it for a much, much inflated price. And so you can make money, but you can't earn interest. And so all of the normal banks that we think of all got ruled out. And all of the normal investment kinds of products got ruled out because we had to go through this Muslim company in order to be able to do something with these funds that we were given. It was a fascinating thing. But we all looked at that and we thought, this is the weirdest thing we ever heard. And even though they had worked out ways to kind of get around the letter of the law and ignore the spirit of the law and try to get there, but it's still kind of, this is just weird. How do you live like that? And it felt counterculture. How do you not have debt? How do you not pay interest? Well, in today's passage, Paul is being counterculture when he says not to owe anyone anything. Now, in that culture, their debt was not just financial, and this word doesn't just apply to financial things, although it does there as well. But in that society, when you owed someone something, that gave them a measure of control over your life. And so by saying, don't owe anyone anything, Paul is saying, keep your life under your own control so that nobody has say over what you do and where you go. And we know that that's intuitively, that's still true. If you graduate from college with $100,000 in debt, that dictates what you can do next, because you've got to make a certain amount of money to begin to pay that back. We understand that. But again, in their society, it went even further than that, because it also included social interactions. If Rudy had done something for me, I've got to do something back for him, or I lose honor. And so I owe him, and he's going to hold me to it. Because he knows that as long as he's got that dangling over my head, he's got the opportunity at some time to make me jump the way he wants to make me jump. And so Paul is saying, don't owe anyone anything, except one thing. And that is the obligation to love them. To love them. And indeed, that debt is owed to everyone. To everyone. There was a wonderful film 15 or so years ago called The Missionary. You remember that film? Robert De Niro played in it. And he plays a character, Rodrigo Mendoza, who is a slave trader and a mercenary and a murderer. He's not a pleasant guy. And he's done all of these terrible things. And it takes place in Central America. And his job there is, with this big net, he catches the indigenous people and he takes them off and he sells them as slaves. And again, he also acts as a mercenary who kills people for money. And he ends up at one point murdering his brother. Eventually, the guilt begins to weigh on him. And he's paralyzed by that guilt, and he meets a Jesuit priest who says, you know what, I got an idea for you. Stop doing what you're doing. And as your penance, what you can do is you can put your sword and your armor all in that big net that you use to catch people. And tie that all together, and tie it to a rope, and tie that, and just drag that with you everywhere you go. And so he begins to do that. It doesn't help with the guilt too much. But at least it gives him a tangible way to feel like he's actually dragging that guilt around with him. And at one point, he's doing that, and he's having this interaction with this Indian there. And the person looks at him and walks over and cuts the rope. And then takes this bundle of stuff and throws it in the river. And walks away. And Mendoza is confronted with forgiveness. His burden has been taken away from him by the very people that he had victimized. And at that point, he becomes a Jesuit. He joins the Jesuits. And he dedicates his life to serving the very people that he had tried to enslave before. And then the story is the conquistadors come and they're trying to take the land from these people, and Mendoza decides to fight with the indigenous people against the conquistadores, and indeed dies along with his new friends. He had a debt of love and forgiveness that had made him into something new, sort of. But forgiveness changed everything in his life. And that's a debt that we all know. That debt of love, that debt of forgiveness. Because even though for us it's not nearly as graphic or dramatic as Mendoza's, it is just as real. Because we have all had people in our lives who have loved us. And that has changed everything. We've all had people in our lives who have looked at us and known good, bad, terrible, indifferent things that we have done and been, and said, you know what? I love you anyway. And those people have changed us. They're sharing with us, they're caring for us, they're loving us, they're forgiving us, has made us who we are. And that's a debt that each of us have. It's a significant debt. My list of people is easy. You know, we can all write that list. And it starts with the obvious people, our parents, our grandparents, teachers, professors, counselors maybe, our immediate family. I can look at Cheryl and Alexis and John and Corwin and Chloe and Christian and Monique, and I can say, yeah, these are the people who shape me, who make me who I am. I can add colleagues in ministry who have known me and have challenged me and helped me to become better at what I am. I can look at church members whose lives have impacted who I am, and especially the first church that I served. You know, here I came out of seminary green and naive, thinking I knew all of the answers and I was going to save the world, and they just loved me through all of my stupidity. I got rid of some of it. I can look back when I was a teenager, and there were a couple of adults in my life who were not family members and not teachers and not even Sunday school teachers. They didn't have any reason they had to be human towards me as a 13-year-old, who we all know what 13-year-olds are like, don't we? But they did. And it made all the difference. It made all the difference in who I was and who I was to become. It's a significant debt that each of us have. And we can't pay it back. We can't pay it back. Some of those folk who have so impacted us are dead. Can't pay them back. They're gone. Some of us we've lost track of. Some of us we never even really had track of. There was a woman who was my counselor at a Billy Graham meeting when I was about 13 years old. I went forward and she met me like they do, and she did the thing they're trained to do. She got my name and all of that. She wrote me multiple times a year for years. Roy, I've been thinking about you. I've been praying for you. I hope things are going well. Just a short note like that. I never once wrote her back. I don't know what her name was. I can't picture her face anymore. But I know that she cared enough to do that even when I didn't respond. And she did it faithfully again and again and again. And probably did it until one of those things came back from her after we had moved away and it said address the unknown. I can't pay her back. The debt, though, constantly grows. It's not one like one that you can pay off. It's not even one like those ones where you pay the minimum monthly payment and that just keeps it kind of on an even keel forever. It just gets bigger. Because every day there's somebody somewhere who does something for me, who loves me, who cares for me, who forgives my whatever it was that I did that particular day, who puts up with me that particular day. And you've got the same debt, and it keeps growing and keeps growing and keeps growing. We all remember the thing with Obama when he said, "You didn't build this." Well, we didn't build that. And you know what? I didn't make this. You all did. And you continue to form this. I got some responsibility in it, but I don't do it all on my own. So what do? How do we respond to a debt that just keeps getting bigger? Well, Paul has a simple answer. He says, you love. You love. You pass it onward. We can't go and pay back some of those people from our past, but we can love the people who are in our lives now. And we can make a difference in their lives. We can help to change them. We can share our gifts even with those whom we do not know. We can volunteer. We can give through the church. Maybe you made a check out to One Great Hour of Sharing with hurricane relief written on it. And that, like I've said, it's not the only place to give, but it's a good place because 100% of it goes to help. Maybe you can go and help to pick up food that would get thrown away otherwise. And then instead of that, we pick it up at the grocery stores and it goes to PATH. Maybe you can stand with and for the DACA folk and say, wait a second, this is not fair. This is not who we are. To make a promise to these young people and then turn around and say, you know what, in 6 months we're sending you back to someplace that you maybe have never even seen and certainly don't know how to live there. We can work for the systemic changes that our society requires to be what it needs to be. All of that is paying that love forward. We can forgive. That can be difficult. Because some things seem beyond forgiveness, don't they? Don't they? There's an ad for a new television show that I heard the other night, and it made my ears perk up, and it made me want to go, oh, something American Assassins or something like that's the title. And the tagline that I heard was, there are some people that are so bad that somebody just has to kill them. Now, I understand where that comes from. I've never gotten that far with my anger and my disdain and my hatred for someone else, but I know where it comes from. There are people that I would say, no, they don't deserve forgiveness. They don't deserve it. Well, that's not what Paul says. It's not what Jesus said. When they asked Jesus, how many times do I forgive someone? He said, well, 70 times 7. That's a good start. Are you kidding? Do you know what they did? Yeah, well, I do. 70 times 7. And then there's even the harder one about forgiveness, and that's forgiving myself. Maybe you have trouble with that one too. Sometimes it's hard because I've really not been what I was supposed to be. Sometimes I have dumped on the people I love. Sometimes I have hurt people that I shouldn't hurt. Sometimes I have walked away from doing what I knew in my heart I was supposed to do. And it's hard to forgive myself sometimes for that. And then there's even the worst one than that. That's not forgiving myself for things that are unreasonable to expect. And we see that all the time. I'll see someone who say, you know, I just can't get over this anger. And I just say, you know what? You're justified in being angry. So be gentle with yourself. Forgive yourself. Then you can move on and learn to forgive them. Sometimes we expect too much. But the bottom line with all of this for Paul is that the debt is big and it keeps getting bigger and we cannot repay it. We can't get rid of it, but we can love forward. And we do that by loving, by forgiving, by helping. And the wonderful piece of that is that as we do that to other people, their debt gets bigger too. And if they learn to help pay that forward, then other people's debts get bigger. And a debt of love, that's not a bad thing to have. And indeed, the bigger it gets, the better it is for all.